All right, everybody, how we doing? It's Sunday night, so you know what it means. It's time for Lions Talk Live Sunday night edition. The Sarge Tony Libretto won't be with us tonight. We've got him out on secret assignment this evening, so he won't be here. So sorry about that. Hold on, let me turn some of this down. All right, there we go. Anyways, welcome to Lions Talk Live. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, I'm going to ask you if you got a free second, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hopefully, for what we do for you guys, you can hit the button, tune into our live chats, come out and see our live broadcasts of games, whatever it may be. And if you got some questions, feel free to interact with us in the comment section below. Now, before we get into anything else, let's start talking about the first game of the preseason. And here's some impressions. If you guys got thoughts, throw them in the comment section below, but I'm going to at least throw at you what I'm thinking. Watching the comments, watching you guys, watching the game, we all had expectations going in. We all knew Goff more than likely wasn't going to play, or if he was going to play, it was going to be incredibly limited, which is basically what we got. We got a limited performance from the offense because so many of the starters weren't out there. You know, you've heard me talk about it on Lions Talk before. There's two ways to look at it. One, you're protecting your big hitters, your playmakers, your most important aspects of the team. The other part of it is you're also taking away meaningful reps from them. And I get most of these guys have played for a long time. I get most of them, they don't need a whole lot to get back up to speed. And in the NFL, football in general, you know, safety is number one. But I want you to think back to a year ago when we opened against Philadelphia. It really was a game of inches. A couple plays go differently in that first quarter where you could see our offense isn't quite in sync. Our defense isn't quite in sync. And to be honest, same with Philadelphia. I want to say Hurts started the game off something like 0 for 8 passing, something like that. But a lot of that's just working things out as you go. So in a game like that, in a season like this where we have high expectations, I'm going to see this as a coach, even though it may be frowned upon. I'm probably trying to get Goff, the starting offense, the starting defense, at least one series this week, or past game, and then this one upcoming game. You know, I get you don't want to overexpose these guys to injuries or anything like that, but the difference between having, say, a high seed in the playoffs and a lower seed, I mean, it could come down to something just as simple as that. So we'll see what shakes out. Hey, if I'm right, then, good for us. If the Lions really come out and look stale the first game of the season against the Chiefs, then I guess we're going to say that maybe we should have played them in the preseason. But Kip Bayless is going to be joining us on the chat. He's been on it before. He's been on the broadcast. He's racing home from work as we speak so he can make it on. So as soon as he is, we'll add him into the feed. If you guys got some thoughts, though, feel free to throw them out there. I see the chat is already starting to blow up, so that's great. Dan Campbell, yep. So let me ask you guys this before we get into some of the topics of the day. If you guys had to pick towards one rookie that stood out in the preseason opener, who was it for you? Mine is right here off the bat. I'm going to say Branch. His coverage abilities, his instincts, his reading, and then obviously we all saw the highlight reel hit that he made early in the first quarter. But what I think it also does for Aaron Glenn and the rest of the team is simply this. CJ and Kirby are probably going to be the starting safeties, and both of them can cover ground in a hurry, have playmaking abilities, ball hawking. They can also make some hits too. So when you have those two out there, now you can play single high safety or deep wide cover two, whatever you want to call it, and you can cover so much ground that it really allows a multitude of different coverages and even a little bit of risk-taking from Aaron Glenn and the defense. With Branch, I don't know if he'll be a starter opening week, but I'm going to say this. I'm expecting that guy to play the Lions' share of snaps on D. What do you guys think in the comment, though? Because I do believe, like last year, use that as an example. We didn't play a ton of downs with three backers on the field. The majority of the time, like most of the NFL now, you more or less play a nickel package where basically – your nickel is basically a strong safety, a free safety that came up, helped out run support. If you remember watching Lions Talk Live last year, I talked a lot about how Okudah really should have remained in that position throughout the year. I thought he excelled whenever Aaron Glenn brought him down into the box. Could still cover people, but he was great, in my opinion, moving forward, hitting, keeping things in front and reacting. A lot like what we saw out of Branch. Having him out wide, it's just at this level, he just never seemed comfortable. And a lot of times against really most teams' number 1 or 2 receivers, he just was overmatched the vast majority of time. But it is what it is. So we're going to jump into some of the topics when Kip Bayless can jump in. Like I said, the Sarge Tony Libretto's out on super double secret assignment, but he'll be back next week. We gave you some thoughts on the first preseason game. I'm going to say this to everybody. I think we all pretty much get why Teddy Bridgewater was brought in. Not that I think Nate Sudfeld's a bad guy or anything like that, but when you get your opportunities, you've got to make the most of them. And I think we all probably going to agree that Nate didn't do the most with what he was given out there. And you can say, hey, opening day rust, whatever it may be for the preseason, but you only get so many shots in life, especially as an NFL quarterback. The writing was on the wall going into that game, and I think the writing now is pretty clear that Nate Sudfeld, he just doesn't fit in. You're going to have Teddy 2 gloves out there for probably as the backup this season. You're going to allow Hendon Hooker to develop, heal, etc., and then probably beyond this upcoming season, Hooker is going to be the backup. And if he plays well, then we'll see what happens in the future as far as him and Goff. All right, so I'm going to ask you guys, based on what you saw in the first preseason game, who are Detroit's 5 or 6 receivers you're going to keep? That's something we, Tony Libretto and some others, in the Lions community, fandom, whatever you want to call it, we all debated a lot during the broadcast of the game and then the day after. And man, you think about 2 years ago when this administration took over, basically gutted the team, sent Stafford off, didn't resign this guy, that guy, whatever. The receiving core was abysmal. I can't think of a single guy who was starting for the Lions against San Francisco in that first game of the regime that's still in the NFL today. I mean, if you guys can think of somebody great, Khalif Raymond was on the team, but he was way back on the depth chart. Same with St. Brown, even though he was a rookie and later on emerged. But against that San Francisco team at Ford Field, I don't believe any of the starters are still playing in the league. And if I'm wrong on that, feel free to correct me. But if I had to say who's going to be the 5 or 6 the Lions are going to keep, I think we can all agree St. Brown's going to be one of them. From there, Khalif Raymond just signed an extension. The other part with Khalif is he also does special teams and returns. So that also adds to him being on the team. I thought about Marvin Jones, how much gas does he have left in his tank? And I'm thinking, he's probably got 1 season left, and that's probably this season. So if I'm going St. Brown, Khalif Raymond, obviously J-Mo, you're going to keep, but as we all know, he's not going to be available for the first portion of the season. After that, I think it starts getting real tricky. Do you keep Reynolds because, he's not bad, but he's not great. He's got a relationship with Goff. Or do you keep Mims? Mims didn't do a lot of great things, but he's got such ability. Do you as a coaching staff say, yeah, we can develop this guy. We can get him to where he needs to be because we can't teach his size. We can't teach his speed. We can't teach his, range of motion. I will say this, and I see Dr. Detroit's in the chat. He says he liked Green. I did too. I thought the kid did a lot of things. It's just, can we get him in? Do you see him being someone who's going to beat out Alexander, who had that huge return? Does he, Green, offer enough, special teams abilities where you can say, yeah, we can keep him? And that's why that's why they're going to play these last 2 preseason games because, man, oh, man, they're going to have to make some tough decisions. This time, maybe the first time in 20 years that other teams are going to be looking at the Lions roster, waiting for cuts, waiting to say, hey, we're going to jump on this guy or that guy if they get cut. Because just talking about the receivers, there's going to be some NFL players who get cut that other teams are going to be salivating over. So, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully nobody gets hurt, but it is the NFL. We all know it's going to happen. It's just a question of time. So you guys in the comments section, shout it out there. Who are your 5 or 6? I think we're going to keep 5 with Gibbs being a /6th receiver, tight ends. I think, Brock's got it. Obviously Laporta and then Mitchell. Mitchell, I thought, looked real well. He looked like he has fully recovered from that ACL. That's just my opinion. But you watch how he came out of breaks, out of cuts, especially on the out routes to the sidelines. I thought, man, he's got all of his confidence back. He doesn't even think about the knee anymore. He looked fluid like he did prior to the injury. Last year, I thought maybe he still showed some signs, which, I think we all get. He was, maybe a year, maybe not even a year from the surgery. So he did, I thought, quite a great job. And I have a lot of confidence after what we've seen in training camp, OTAs, and then in the first preseason game. I got a whole lot of confidence in that tight end room. All right. Now let's jump on. And again, you guys have questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, whatever it may be. Order a pizza if you want. Just do it in the comment section. That way we can communicate. So thoughts on the defense. We talked a little bit about Branch, what he's going to be able to do. And I think what he's going to be able to allow the Lions to do, have some real flexibility on cut downs, plus the different types of schemes they want to run. I was real happy to see Aaron Glenn mix up the pressures, mix up the coverages. Last year when we made our run, it was basically all very vanilla defense. The Lions were going to play straight person-to-person, man-to-man, whatever you want to say, across the board. On the outsides, more often than not, they were going to force you wide up the sidelines. They weren't going to give up the slant routes from the outside receivers. And, it just became predictable. But to be fair, when you're good at something, you're good at something. Prior to those adjustments, the Lions just weren't great at many things on defense. But in the first preseason game, you saw some zone dropbacks. I thought Campbell, for being his first NFL experience, he did not look bad in coverage when he dropped. And we all know he got a hand on one, but you looked at his ability to read. Plus, he is all of 6'5". He makes it a little bit harder to throw some passes over the top of a backer in that area. He's got some length for arms. But getting to Glenn, I was happy to see there were multiple times he sent basically zero blitzes where he just sent the house after him and had confidence in the back end of the secondary or whoever was dropping into coverage. There was sometimes he overloaded one side or the other and it forced a lot of miscommunications with the Giants' offensive line. He mixed it up quite a bit, and I thought if that's the future for this season, then you look at our division. Just start there with Green Bay and Chicago. I get you have some quarterbacks that are getting experience, but they're still not the most experienced. Justin Fields, I think, has a great upside in this league as long as the Chicago Bears don't get him killed. And last year I thought there were times, especially when he played him the second time, he looked like his reads were a little off. He didn't have faith that people were going to get open, and so he gave up on the play quickly. If the Bears let him take too many shots early in the season, I'm going to say this. He might go back to those habits like a lot of rookie or younger quarterbacks do because they just don't have the faith in the offensive line, nor the receivers or the tight ends and running backs. So start with that. But now talk about Jordan Love. And we'll see what happens. But what you've seen so far in his career, plus the preseason, is there anybody out there, and go ahead, throw it in the comments if you got it, is there anybody out there that says when you watch Jordan Love play, the game's on the line, we're okay letting this kid pick apart defenses? I think Green Bay actually may be the second place team in the NFC this year, in the NFC North, but it's because I think they have such a great defense. I think if they can keep games close and not ask too much out of Jordan Love, then that kid might be able to do some stuff. Without that, I think if the more you can put pressure on him to have to make plays and sometimes go off script, the more he might fold. If you watch Lions talk so far this preseason, I'm expecting Minnesota to take a bit of a fall. And part of that is their defense is aged. The other part is some of their skill positions aren't as skilled as they once were. The last part is law of averages. Last year, they won a ton of close games, fluke plays, whatever you want to call it. At some point, things level out, and I just don't think Kirk Cousins is quite as good as he used to be. And I never thought he was great. I just didn't think he killed you. Because of that, I do think that they're going to fall back. And I don't know if they'll be last place in the division, but I can see there being a battle going into the latter part of the season between Minnesota and maybe Chicago for last place in the division. So, somebody, Maxie got a good point here about Drummond. I didn't think he was that bad. I thought there was basically a lot of Lions receivers that looked good. Yes, J-Mo had a drop. Some of his route running still isn't great, but I'm really, in my mind, this is his rookie season, and I'm real happy. Campbell, Ben Johnson, the coaching staff and the front office are putting him on the field for these next 3 games. They're going to do everything they can to develop him, to get him ready for when he comes onto the field. This is, to me, invaluable experience for him. If he gets hurt, oh well, he's got basically 2 months to heal. Let's hope he doesn't, but I think you got to get the kid out there. All right, so moving on. Defense, like I said, I'm excited to see what they're going to do. The pass rush was there, the coverage was there, and the different schemes I thought were really good. We kind of talked about this, earlier, but Nate didn't look great, Sudfeld. And if I misspelled his name, I apologize. I should have proofread some of this. But is anybody out there saying Teddy Two Toes, Teddy Two Gloves, whatever you want to call him, Bridgewater, that he shouldn't be the backup? Because Hendon Hooker probably had to be looking up there and going, man, I can do what Sudfeld's doing, and I'm a rookie now. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but if you think there's a reason for the Lions to keep Teddy Bridgewater, go ahead and throw it in. Not Teddy Bridgewater, Nate Sudfeld. Go ahead and put it in the comment section. But J-Mo's got rock hands. Well, hopefully they can coach him up a little bit, get him out of that. But he's going to have to do that. I would say this, if you guys go back and remember like Herman Moore's rookie year or Johnny Morton's or maybe even Kelvin Johnson, I don't see a whole lot of difference. I mean, there's a learning curve, and I think while I think we all need to be cautiously optimistic with J-Mo, he's got some skills to build on. Yeah, bye Nate. Cut Nate. Yeah, I wonder how long they're going to wait before Nate is out of town. So he's probably knowing the writings on the wall. I mean, you have to. There's no way they're going to keep 4 quarterbacks, and I do think they're going to keep Hooker. It's just to what capacity if they put him on the IR or whatever. All right, let's not spend a whole lot of time on Sudfeld because I think we all agree he's on borrowed time. All right, real quick, if you guys can hit that like button, it really helps us out a lot. If I'm doing enough to earn your trust and your ability to want to come back and watch more, please do consider subscribing. I'd really like to get to like 2,800 subscribers by the season start. Also, for the first game of the season against Kansas City, if you want to come out and join Lions Talk Live, we are going to be broadcasting from Main Street Pub on West Main in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The Sarge, Tony Libretto, and I, we can't show the game, but we're basically going to, commentate, announce it. We're going to have a pregame show, halftime, and then postgame. If you're there at the restaurant, you can get on. We'll throw some questions at you guys. You got to watch what you say. It is live, so keep that in mind. But, make it an interactive experience. A lot of times, Main Street Pub also offers football bingo. You get there, they'll explain it to you, but there's free prizes, sometimes rewards as well. So it's a win-win for everybody. Hopefully, we see you out there. If you need anything, go ahead and throw it in the comment section. I'll try to help you out. So next, let's talk about the rookies. Let's start with Gibbs, because he was the first picked rookie. And I want to say this. Most of the media and most of us fans probably, fair to say, when the draft happened, we were probably scratching our heads a little bit when he was picked. But the question I have for anybody is, are we still scratching our heads, or do we start to understand why this administration took him? I'm going to say this. The kid stands out. He had a couple plays that first game that you could see he's one move away from a huge gainer. He's got the ability to force defenses to account for him at all times. And while we can all agree J-Mo, hands of stones or whatever, he also has that ability. So the Lions are starting to put multiple people on the field that, man, put some real pressure on opposing defenses, and you get a favorable matchup for somebody. Well, J-Mo's going to have to catch it. But Gibbs, you guys have heard me talk about it, he's going to provide a problem for every defense they face. I mean, if you put a linebacker on him, you motion him out wide, that linebacker's in a no-win situation. I can't think of one linebacker in this league that if he gets put out into the slot or out wide, that is going to stop him from running any kind of routes. So now, do you put a safety or corner on him? Well, if you bring, Gibbs inside now and run him off tackle, off guard, or a pull, those guys just aren't massive enough to stop any offensive guard on a pull situation. Or let's be honest, most tight ends are going to have their ways with a corner or a safety. So it's going to be interesting to see all the different ways the Lions use them. But I'm going to tell you this. I do expect we're going to see some packages, not in the preseason, but we're going to see some packages where we see Gibbs under center in a Wildcat situation. All right, I'm getting the tap. Well, he just went off. Skip Bayless was about ready to chime in, but we'll see him when he comes back on. It looks like he's trying to get dialed in here. Hold on. Add to the stream. All right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. So bring you up to speed. We're talking about the rookies. You got impeccable timing. So, Kip, let me ask you. You saw that you were actually at Ford Field watching the first preseason game. Give me a little bit of a breakdown analysis on your take of all the Lions rookies that you saw out there on the field.
I mean, my take, Branch and Campbell are going to be those guys for the future of our defense. I think Branch kind of surprised me with his sideline to sideline speed. I know he made a pretty good play there. I think it was the first quarter, second quarter. He was on the other side of the field and he came across on a screen pass. And I mean, he laid an absolute boomstick on somebody. And then Campbell, man, I mean, just watching the guy play, I mean, granted, some of the passes that were thrown weren't the greatest, but I mean, to know that his biggest thing in college, he wasn't really the greatest coverage guy, or he was slow. He didn't really have the greatest 40 time, but
right.
Anything that I saw, he was locked down. He was in on every play. I just think it was another Brad Holmes masterclass. And, I know the big thing was, what are we going to do with Anzalone? I know a lot of people didn't want to replace it, or sign Anzalone, but I think he's a good mentor for Campbell, and Campbell's going to be a big part of his defense for a while. So,
we all talked about, I get he's not really a rookie, but J-Mo, James Williams, in a lot of ways, this is his rookie season. I get he got basically preseason snaps with, playing a couple plays here and there in a few games, but you saw how the Lions were using him. You saw some of his routes. You got any concerns with this kid, or you think, man, the upside's looking pretty bright?
I'm glad you brought this up because I've been kind of going back and forth on this. But I'm a big J-Mo supporter, man. Obviously with Detroit being the sports town it is, one of the biggest things that's always about us was, we could never get people to come in town and never stay and play for us. And I know the guys had problems, and I know the guys played minimal football with Bama being injured and things like that. He played at Ohio State, then goes to Bama, injuries, and then he comes into Detroit. He plays, 3 games in the year, and then the gambling thing. I have no concerns on him. I mean, Dan Campbell kind of put it in a presser, with his hands. He's always got elusive speed, but he needs to work on his hands. Yep. And, me being the sports media guy I scroll through Twitter and I see nothing but the sports beat writers just bashing this kid. And it's just blasphemy to me that, someone that gives us all this team. I mean, I went to training camp, and this guy stayed after training camp 20, 30 minutes and was on the field with Antoine Randall, catching balls, catching tennis balls, hitting the jug machine. So he's doing everything right. But that's the stuff that's not getting put on national media. It's all the bad things about J-Mo. And, everyone sees it. He sees it. And it's like, are we really going to run this man out of town? Because, he really hasn't played football in over a year and a half. I mean, he played 54 snaps or 56 snaps in preseason. And to his credit, like Nate Sudfeld missed a couple throws to him. I know people were complaining on the pass that went over the middle. I mean, the kid's got to build some muscle. I think the only thing that I saw during training camps he just couldn't get off coverage really well. He needs to work on his hands and come off. But no, I'm not going to give up on J-Mo, man. I mean, he's not he's not supposed to be that big primetime receiver that everyone thinks he's going to be. He's going to be that receiver that goes in and gets you, 5-6 catches a game, but he's going to break one of those 20-yard runs into 80-yard runs or something like that, and he's going to end up with a huge stat line at the end. So I just give the guy time, man. He's putting the work in. He's down on the field with his players every time. He's setting blocks on the run. When I was at Ford Field, that was one thing I noticed about him. I didn't see many of those receivers out there setting blocks for the running backs, when they got out in front of them. So, I love J-Mo. I hope he makes it, and I just hope we don't run him out of town.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, Dr. Detroit's got a nail on the head here. I think the only issue people really have with him is when you're drafted high, people just assume you got an S on your chest and a cape and you can do no wrong. But, when you saw J-Mo coming last year, the first thing I thought when he got in a game is, boy, this kid needs to eat a sandwich or two. He is so thin, and I get it. He hasn't yet grown into man weight.
And that's I kind of make the comparison to I want to say it was Garrett Wilson or one of them, they came in, or I think it was Waddle. Waddle came in, he was really small. They've been comparing him in the national media to him and Wilson. They both came in really small in Bama. They weren't the greatest filled out wide receivers. And in year 3, they put on some weight. They're starting to get a little more catches, things like that. So, I think we still got 2 or 3 more years of this J-Mo thing to see what happens. But,
right.
I'm not going to do anything until year 3. If he comes in year 3, he's still having problems with drop balls and stuff, maybe it's time we start looking elsewhere. But no, I'm huge with J-Mo. I think with the offense that we have with Gibbs and St. Brown and Laporta and Marvin Jones Jr., like he's going to find space, and he's just going to take one of those 20-yard screens and bust it for 80, 90 yards. And it's just going to be, everyone will forget about the drop passes once things start going right,
Let's talk real quick about Jack Campbell, the meat missile, whatever you want to call him. He did get a lot more snaps than I anticipated he'd get. But what are your thoughts on him? Right before you got on air, I offered some thoughts from what I saw in the first game. But tell me your impressions.
On who was it now? Say it again.
Campbell.
The linebacker.
Yep.
I think he's a stud. Great on football IQ. He was in on every play. Run stuffer. He's going to be huge in the run game. I think he's going to be one of those backs that can just read plays. Like I said, his football IQ was off the charts. I didn't expect a big guy like that to be just downhill and just competitive. So I was really surprised at how fast he is side to side and in coverage. I think our biggest concern for a lot of years was linebackers in coverage. We never could, we get that tight end out and they'd beat us over the 10-yard slants or the crossings. And I think Campbell's going to make up that. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts. He has potential to be a first depth chart. And unfortunately, that means someone's got to go down. And, I see Rodrigo kind of being second or third string. So,
yeah, I think one of the good things this team's going to face, and we were talking about it a little bit before you got on, is just talking about wide receivers off the bat. There's such depth there that I believe a lot of teams are going to specifically be watching our preseason games for receivers, probably linebacker, and definitely defensive end / outside rushers, because we seem to have a ton of depth there. There are going to be some guys who get cut who are going to be picked up pretty quick by other teams. So, Brock, let's talk about Martin in the middle. He didn't play as much as I thought they were going to get him, but did you have any thoughts on him? I saw him in a couple run stuffs.
I saw him a couple, in the game. I didn't really see a lot, but in training camp, he was a beast. He was in almost every play. He was pushing the piles back. He had a couple nice moves on 3-on-3 where he was just beating the centers right off with an easy swing move. I think he's going to be more of that fill in on the third down, when we need a run stop. Yep. But he's also going to help in the pass rush too, So, if you get some big guy in there that can push the pile back and it helps off those edges, why not? But for what we got him at, if they mold him right, he's going to be a beast on that defense.
I agree. When we did the draft, I was saying, I think by the end of the day, my thought with Martin was he could be pushing for a starting spot or at least starter type snaps. The probably the latter part of the season. You get like the last 4 to 5 games. I think, man, he could really be in there. He's just got so much athleticism and upper body strength, and he seems to have the right personality that wants to get better. And coach him up. Let's see what happens. Okay, so next one. Based on what you've known so far from OTAs, preseason, I get a long way to go for this. But how serious are the Lions for being a contender to earn a Super Bowl spot from the NFC?
I can see it up there, but I think we just have to see how this team molds. We all know the NFC is not really tough, right? I mean, you got the Eagles, the 49ers, and it's a huge drop-off. I would have loved to see the Lions last year play the 49ers because I think they could have beat them. I for sure think they can make a run in the NFC this year. So we'll see. I would love to see them go to the Super Bowl with all the hype, but I think maybe 1 more year, 2 more years if everything goes right. And I mean, who knows? They could shock us all and go with the depth they have and Jared Goff playing at the high level he's at, and with some of the people we got. If our defense comes out and they're top 10, there's no excuse for them. I mean, they could do it.
Well, I think when you look at a team that has the ability to push for a Super Bowl, nowadays in the NFL, you've got to have an offensive line and defensive line, just chances go up, 100% or whatever you want to say, if they have strong lines on both sides. Lions now also have depth, not just at the lines, but at the skill positions. Yep. So really, in my opinion, man, the Lions could really stack up with, if you say Philly and the 49ers are your 2 biggest, chances to go to the Super Bowl. You do a breakdown of the Lions, and I just don't see where we're vastly different than them in many positions. So assuming we stay healthy, assuming that Ben Johnson keeps doing what he did last year, and that Aaron Glenn, for the first time in his tenure with the Lions as the defense coordinator, can actually mix and match a little bit on D, I think there's a real chance that we can make a play, especially if Brock Purdy's arm doesn't fully recover for the 49ers. They're going to be looking for somebody to bring in because I don't think they have a legit backup at this time.
No, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, 49ers, who knows what's going to happen with the Bosa contract? Who knows how long that's going to take? I mean, you lose Bosa off that D-line, it changes that defense. I mean, the Chiefs are facing it right now with Jones. So we'll see. I mean, they could pull some stuff off and make a run in the NFC North. So,
well, we'll see what shakes out. I mean, the long road between the game 1 and the end of the regular season, but I think we all agree that the Lions take care of the division, which they basically did last year. They got a real chance to be hosting a playoff game at Ford Field. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to Ford Field when it's packed and jammed, like it was a couple years ago on Monday Night Football against Green Bay, but it's just an incredibly deafening place to play in. If you're a team that relies on a lot of audibles or adjustments at the lines, that's going to be real difficult for anybody. So if the Lions do happen to get a higher seed and host, and you're facing a lower seed that maybe doesn't have the greatest quarterback and now struggles to communicate in clutch situations, that could be a recipe for the Lions to say, hey, Jared Goff should have his own statue out front of Ford Field right with Eric Kramer. It's the only 2 Lions to win the game. All right, let's move on from that. So segue from the Super Bowl talk into Goff. Let's talk about this. Is Jared Goff, based on what he's done in Detroit, only in Detroit, is he a top 10 NFL quarterback?
I mean, if we're going off his last 8 games, yeah. Even the year he came in, we were 3-13-1. He still had pretty good stats. It wasn't he was terrible. I would definitely say he's top 10 up there in Detroit at least. I've had discussions with many people. If he goes in this year, he wins the NFC North and he wins a playoff game. I mean, to me, there's going to be a lot of talk. Was he the best quarterback at more than Stafford? I mean, because we had Stafford for how many years and he never won that playoff game. So there's a lot of rumblings that Jared Goff is the top 10 in the league, and I think the national media has kind of picked up on it, and I think he's forgotten, because there's just you got Mahomes, you got Allen, you got Burrow, you got all these guys, and Jared Goff's numbers were right up there with him. And maybe not, everyone's like, well, he doesn't have the talent wise, but I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown to me is a top 10, if not 5 receiver in the league. So Yeah, I would agree with that statement. I think he's top 10 at least in Detroit. And if he goes in this year and he wins a playoff spot and he wins the division, there could be talks that, it's out of the world that they're even saying this, but retire 16 in Detroit when he leaves, which who knows,
Well, you bring up some good points, and here's what I'd say. I mean, if Goff wins a playoff game or two in this town, he's probably never buying a drink while he's in Detroit again. Somebody's buying it for him. If he gets us to the Super Bowl, I mean, the city will probably all chip in and buy him his own parade to have once a year or something like that. But here's what we know about Goff. He's not flashy. He's not this, that, and the other thing. But he's been in the league 7 years, and according to his peers, he's been one of the top 100 players 3 times. I get his rookie year. He had Jeff Fisher. They were terrible. They didn't do anything. Then the thing was that, just the OC or the head coach of the Rams made him good. But when he came to Detroit, he did not look great for the first, whatever it was, 7 or 8 games. They fired the then OC, Campbell, Ben Johnson take over. And from that point on, he's looked pretty damn good. Mm-hmm. Last year, prior to the TJ Hockenson trade, yes, he had 5 picks. And I did a video on it. 4 of his picks come on passes to TJ Hockenson. And I won't bore you guys with all of it, but if you want, you can look through that video. There's obviously miscommunications between those two. After Hawk is traded, he doesn't throw he only throws 1 pick the rest of the season and none to tight ends. So whatever the imbalance was with him and Hawk was cleaned up with other people. But I'll say this for Goff. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. If he goes out, wins the division, wins some playoff games, I think he's cemented himself as a constant consideration for top 10 status because he's done it with 2 different teams. And there's not many quarterbacks that can say they've done that.
Nope.
All right. Let's move on from Goff and talk about – we're going to do a little buy and sell. I'm going to throw a question at you, and you're going to tell me whether you think, you're buying this information or selling it. So if we're going to start off with already did that one. Goff top 10 quarterback. Man, I'm messing up here. Is Jay Moe, will he be an elite receiver this season? Are you buying or selling that?
I'm gonna buy into this, and the other reason why I'm saying this is with the depth of our offense, J-Mo is going to take the top end, and with Denzel Mims now in the question, J-Mo is going to have a lot of under routes and things like that. I think he's going to be able to take those routes and turn them into big plays. I'm not looking for him to go 1,000 right off rip. If he can hit the 500-600 mark, that's good for me. But I'm going to buy into this because I think he's going to end up being the big receiver that everyone hopes he's going to be for that 12th overall.
Yeah, I think he's, because of who's out on the field with him. I'm just talking for this year.
Yeah,
I don't think he's going to be elite. I don't think he's developed the route running, the hands and stuff. But I think because of what he can do, along with what some of the coverages are going to be pulled away from him, just because you got to cover. I'm assuming Gibbs. You're going to have to cover St. Brown. Marvin Jones, can he, do enough, or, Khalif Raymond or whoever else to help pull enough coverage away where teams are going to have to pick and choose? I mean, I would not want to be a defensive coordinator saying, I'm going to leave Jameson Williams in one-on-one coverage on the outside or a quick slant over the middle, because every time he touches it, he's got the potential to go somewhere with it. So we'll see what happens there. But sounds like, there's a
lot of sells.
A lot of sells. So that's all right. That means it could be a good time to buy them. All right. Both of the Quara brothers had a pretty good performance in the first preseason game. So buy or sell, both of the brothers will make the team this year.
I think I'm going to have to sell on this one. I think the only reason why is depending on where – I always get the brothers mixed up. I forget. I think Romeo's the one we had a couple years ago who had 10 sacks right around there. They were both electric in the game. They look really good, but I just think our depth now, as far as it's come along, one of those guys is going to have to go. And unfortunately, Romeo's got the stats. It sucks. Hopefully we can keep Julian because he looked really good. I mean, I really like him, but it sucks because this team is so well-rounded right now that you got to cut someone. And I think he's on the outside looking in with, just our line, and especially with Levi coming back, that's one left spot for someone like Julian. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to sell on that one. So
I agree. Romeo I like because he's got power and some speed. Um, Julian, though, I think, man, the best way I would equate him is a Madden player that
mhm.
he's got all the stats in the world, but he just can't get things done in the real world. So we've got a lot of depth. It's going to stink to see people go, but you can't keep everyone. So I do believe one of them makes it. Is it Romeo let go because of his salary? Who knows? But it's going to be a dogfight these last couple preseason games between Charles Harris, Romeo, and so many other people to get one of those spots. And I think, man, we're going to be the beneficiaries of it. Now, I didn't have a banner for this one, but I want to throw it at you. I know somebody kind of got to it in the chat earlier, and I apologize I couldn't get to it faster. But Levi Onwuzurike,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think based on what you've seen so far?
I love him in the middle of that defense. I'm just happy he's back to playing football because there was talks that he may never play football again with his back injuries and things like that. But when he was out there, I mean, he was just pushing the center back. He was pushing the guards back, and I think it caused havoc. So you can never have too many nose guards right there in the middle. If he's out there and he's playing, it's more for the defense. I'm pretty sure he was in on a couple, half sacks in there. But yeah, he looked really good, especially for someone that hasn't played football in a couple years. I mean, I was impressed. I think they'll probably get him more reps, but yeah, everything I've noticed, I wouldn't be surprised if he's on that line with some of those guys in different packages because he's explosive. Like I couldn't believe the push that he was getting on some of these guys. I mean, granted, I don't know if New York had their starters in or what, but yeah, he was just pushing these guys back, and then when that pockets collapsed, Houston was there, and those guys. So,
and Skip, I couldn't agree with you more. What I think is going to happen with him, and we'll see what happens, but I believe he's got such talent on a limited basis, you're not going to get rid of him. I think the Lions are just going to say, hey, can we get 10 to 15 snaps on this guy every Sunday? If you do, he's an impact player for those. He's probably never going to be an every down player, which was probably once the projection that he would get like 70% of the snaps.
mm-hmm.
But if he can get 10 to 20% of the snaps on a given Sunday and just be a rotation with, you see what McNeil's done. We've talked about Martin, and some of the other guys out there. I just think they're going to have depth. The other part is as he develops and he proves that back can hold up, now maybe you're able to keep him on a lesser contract, for another 3 or 4 years, because I want to say his rookie contract ends after this season, but maybe he's got one more year on it. We'll wait and see. But real quick, because I know we're running out of time, we can only go about 45 minutes. I do want to remind you guys of a couple things. One, the opening day game is going to be at the Kalamazoo Main Street Pub on West Main. The Sarge, Tony Libretto, and I are going to host that game. You can come in for the pregame. You can come in for the postgame, halftime, all that stuff. Also, we're going to host this week on Thursday, a NFC North breakdown. We're going to break down along with a couple other guest hosts from Minnesota teams, Chicago teams, etc., and talk about the NFC North. If you'd like to come out and see that, that's going to be at the Stadium Drive Liquor Store. I know we did the pre-draft there. Stadium Drive Liquor Store this Thursday, 6:30 to 7:15. Rumor is the owner of the store might even have some free samples for those in attendance. We had a pretty good turnout last time, so he's trying to double down and get some more fans in the stands, but there'll be a live broadcast. If you want to get our full schedule for where we're going to be hosting games, away games this season, go ahead and leave a comment in the section below, and I'll try to get it to you guys once we firmed it up. We've got a couple other locations that we've talked to the managements of those restaurants or providers, and you guys can more welcome come on out. And like I said, maybe even get some free stuff. Kip, why don't you tell everybody about you, what you do, and self-promote yourself for a second?
Well, I am currently a salesman at T-Mobile, so if you guys need anything, holler my way. I'm in Marshall, Michigan, so if you're close to there, come see me. But I do have a radio station. It's called Catch My Vibe Radio. I'm the head of the sports thing. We're setting up events. We're right out of Jackson. We got some events coming up, advertising some in-home athletes and things like that. So be on the lookout for that. I'll be on, I can even share it and give it to Dan and he can throw it on the page or whatever. But yeah, just kind of, staying in the sports media, and obviously looking forward to the big season. With me being a season ticket holder, I'll be at every game almost. I think the only game I won't be at is Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, that's the family time. I was already vetoed on that. So, but outside of that, hey, I'll be at every Lions game, rooting them on. And, all the JMO haters, I'm just going to say, relax. We got this. He'll be fine. And, we're going to be NFC champs this year. So let's do it.
All right, guys, I want to thank you all for tuning in this Sunday. Again, we'll have it on next Sunday as well. Thursday, if you want to come out, Stadium Drive Liquor Store in Kalamazoo, Michigan, feel free. The local owner said he's going to have some free samples for select people in the crowd. If you got questions, you'll be able to fire them away at us live as we're talking. And don't forget the game against Kansas City, Main Street Pub on West Main in Kalamazoo as well. Take care. I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing so. And we'll see you next time on Lions Talk Live.